Welcome to Unlocking Levels, helping you reach new levels in your potential. What's good, y'all? It's your boy CL the Source back with another episode of Unlocking Levels, and today is a special one. I got somebody from my hometown with me as a guest, and this gentleman is actually running for a very important position within the city, and the city I'm talking about is San Francisco. Born and raised San Franciscan. I love the city, and so does this gentleman that I have with me. He's my family. You know what I'm saying? We grew up together, and I wanted to get him on here to give him an opportunity for y'all to get to know him, give y'all an opportunity to get to know him, and I'm gonna learn some things too. You know what I'm saying? It's been a while since we connected, so this is even like a real cool catch up session between family members, man. And today is my guest. My guest is Mike Juan. He'll be running for police sheriff of San Francisco. And before we get into it, I really wanted to kind of just give y'all a little background of how we know each other. Like I said, we fam. We went to the same high school. We grew up together. We used to play basketball all the time, man. I'm talking about we used to know each other from like knee high, man. You know what I'm saying? So, that's how close I am with this guy right here, man. I love this brother right here. I believe in this brother, and I want to learn more from this brother as I know you do too. So, without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Mike Juan.
How you doing, man? Good to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you,
Absolutely.
man.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for being here as well. I know your time is very valuable, so I appreciate you being here. You got a lot of work to do. As you were telling me off camera, you got a lot of things going on in your personal life. You're continuing to ascend and evolve and expand yourself outwards. And like I said in the intro, you are stepping into a major role within the city as police sheriff. Can you tell me a little bit about why you wanted to join this or actually involve yourself in this position?
Yeah. So I'll just quickly go. My name is Mike Juan. Everyone calls me Mike. So I'm running for San Francisco sheriff because it's the highest elected office in any county. So just to specify the difference, so since we're a city and county in San Francisco, there is a elected sheriff, and then there's a police chief who's appointed by the mayor. So that's the actual distinction between the two roles in San Francisco. But it's different in other counties. For example, San Mateo County, they also have an elected sheriff, but each little city in San Mateo County has their own police chief, which is appointed by the city council and the mayor. So like Daly City has a police chief. The town of Colma has their own police chief. So a lot of people in San Francisco don't know that there's a distinction between the two roles, right? And they don't know that that's necessarily an elected position until, I mean, they see it on the ballot, but they don't really know what that is. I've been meeting with the community, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know we had a sheriff." I was like, "Yeah, every county in the state and in the country has a sheriff that runs that county, and that's a distinction." So since we're a city and county, the sheriff's department or the sheriff's office slowly gets lost in the mix of things, in the mix of politics, in the mix of
Of
just
course.
bureaucracy and structure. So I guess to start off, why I'm doing this, I love this city. Born and raised in San Francisco, grew up in the Excelsior Crocker Amazon neighborhood. Went to the very epic Archbishop Reardon High School, who's doing real well these days in sports. I mean, it feels like I'm watching all of them going to like D1 programs of basketball, football, and now it's co-ed, which we didn't experience, but it's crazy to see. But it shows how our alma mater is growing and evolving. And I actually just led a retreat there, the senior retreat in April, which was great. So it's kind of reconnecting with our roots at Reardon. But a little bit more about myself. After Reardon, I joined the Marines. I did 10 years in the United States Marine Corps and deployed to Iraq in 2005. And when I came back from Iraq, I went to the reserves, and then I pretty much went to school at the same time and served the rest of my time simultaneously in the reserves. And I did college, so I graduated from San Francisco State. And this many years later, almost 10 years later, I'm now in a master's program at the University of San Francisco, getting a master of public administration, which all fits into this new role that I'm trying to attain as the next San Francisco sheriff. And that's really, in a nutshell, who I am. But to get to like deeper why I'm running, which you were asking earlier, was we've kind of seen the city turn a different direction, and hasn't necessarily been the most pleasant to see. And I think it's no secret to the rest of the world, the rest of the United States, and just in California, like San Francisco, since the pandemic, has not sort of recovered from one the issues that came with the business having to close down because they couldn't stay open, uh, and it just wasn't easy for kind of the where we've gone. So we clearly know. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but the reason why I'm running is I've seen a lot of the crime go up. And I guess to rewind a little bit, I've been a police officer for 10 years at various police departments within the city. So that's why I looked at how can I be the most influential? How can I make the most change if I'm a police officer? So I'm a police officer at UC San Francisco. I can't do it from that seat. And I was thinking for years, like, how can we fix these things that we're seeing? You can't do it from if you're not even in the game. I always compare to sports, and I know we all know sports well. I can't do it from the sidelines, and I can't even do it. You know, as much as you want, you can't do it from the sideline. You have to get in the game. So this is me getting in the game, and I thought about it for years, like what I would do differently. And I was like, you know what? Maybe last April 2023, I just had this epiphany is, you know what? I'm going to do this thing. And that's sort of the journey that I started on. So that sort of brings us to what I was mentioning was seeing all this crime, right? Like we, people call it Bib City. It's like you can't leave anything in your car, even if there's nothing in sight. They will break. These criminals will break into your car just to see if they can find something. And God forbid it's a rental car. These guys already know. So the rise in thefts because of California Prop 47, which the whole $950 situation. If it's less than that, it's a misdemeanor, and that's been going on for about 10 years. So all these laws and all these policies have finally come to that tipping point. It's just overflowing, like the perfect storm of scenarios. And then our economy the past few years hasn't been the greatest. Inflation's high. All these things are causing this, and I feel that the only way to address any of this is you have to be in that position to make changes. And this was the fastest way I knew I could do it, and I know that I'm qualified to do it because I met the minimum requirements. It says on the piece of paper, you need these requirements. Well, guess what? I met them. People and doubters will say, oh, he's too young, or he doesn't work for the sheriff's department now. I mean, I used to work there. I worked there for a very brief time, but I realized, like, long term, I don't want to stay in that role because I wasn't going to grow and evolve in the ways that I wanted. So that's why I left. I purposely left all the agencies that I've left on my own without any issue. I can go back to those agencies if I wanted to. It's just I think we're all searching for what's going to keep us uh, engaged, what's going to keep us motivated to do what we're going to do. And if we're not growing as young individuals and professionals on both sides, professionally and personally, then what are we doing? So that's sort of what's driving me right now to do what I'm doing.
Man, y'all heard it first, y'all. I mean, why he's doing what he's doing is for the love of the city. You know what I'm saying? He talked about Epiphany. Fun fact, he went to Epiphany as well.
I did, I did.
Yeah, elementary school out here in the city, So, this man loves the city as much as I love the city. And me being from here, San Francisco, it's heartbreaking to see kind of where we've gone in terms of like how bad it's gotten. We see a lot of things that out here are very concerning. It's dangerous out here. We're not getting the best public rep out there on social media platforms, on regular media platforms. Everyone thinks of San Francisco as Gotham City of some sort, and it's as somebody that's grew up out here, I'm sure you can feel the same way, Mike. That it hurts to hear that, man. And I love the city. It's still such a beautiful city. People are, being misled. Yeah, we got problems, this, that, and the third, but it's still a beautiful city with a lot of beautiful people. So many great things to do out here and see. It's a historic city, and we both take a lot of pride in it. And we just want to see our city flourish. We just want to see our city doing better. We want to feel safe in our communities. We want to see people doing better. We want to see crime rates going down, all these things, right? We want to see the city cleaned up. We don't want to have to be walking outside having to kind of dodge stepping in feces, man. Come on,
Hmm.
man. That's not any type of way to live. And Mike, I personally, when I found out you were running for police sheriff, I got super excited because I know where your heart is, man. And in this conversation, y'all, we're gonna open up about a lot of different things in regards to the city, but I think more importantly, you're gonna get to know who this candidate is. You're gonna get to know what his personality is, what he's interested in, why he loves the city, why he's fighting so hard to do what he's doing, why he's been in this profession for so long, where so many people, get so frustrated to the point where they no longer want to do it. It's a very dangerous position that should be getting a lot more respect. You know what I'm saying? He's out there risking his life every day, along with so many other people that are doing it. And I think that word alone, respect. If we can just learn to respect each other and connect with each other, I think so much can be accomplished in that regard if we're able to do that, right, Mike? So, the next question I have for you, man, just so that people can get to know you a little bit more, aside from your just background, man, we want to know what your personality's like, like why you love SF, man, like and some of the cool things you got to do growing up in SF, man, and just go ahead and take this time to, really open up about who you are, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned some of it already. It was just being from here, the different types of people you meet because of diverse, you know, different communities that we have in San Francisco. You'll meet someone from all walks of life, from your artists all the way to your tech folks. But what really has made me love the city so much is just growing up and the people I've met along the way. That, like, the city was just the icing on the cake, but the people is really where it's at. Just being part of the various communities growing up from elementary school to high school to college, you know, representing the city. When I went off to the Marines, it's like, where are you from? Well, I'm from San Francisco. And then, people think of the Golden Gate and all the great tourist attractions and all the natural beauty and the scenery and the culture and just it's a vibe, right? That's kind of what people are saying now. So those are the first real things of why I love the city. And then a little more about myself, my personality. I've dedicated my life to service since a young cat at our elementary school, at my elementary school at Epiphany here in the Excelsior. Growing up, it was sort of a calling for me. And then people think like, oh, really? You knew it was a calling? It was yeah. Well, why else do you do it? Why else do you serve other people if it wasn't a calling? Just because you're younger doesn't mean you don't know that you're there to do it. Or maybe I was just naive and I just did it because. But for me, I've just grown up to serve all the communities that I've been engaged with, from church to the youth group to high school, from community service at high school at Reardon to campus ministry. Just I've always just been attracted to how can I better serve and build a community within those areas. So at San Francisco State, I did the same thing, and even here at USF, uh, I'm doing the exact thing that I've been doing since childhood. Is bringing groups of people together from different walks of life. We're here sharing an experience in a master's program. How can we, allow each other to thrive and bring the best out of each other? And really, that's sort of been my focus uh, as far as life. And then the same goes for the Marines. I've built a strong bond with the people I served with. Many may even watch this podcast. A bunch of them are still in the city working as firefighters or as police officers in San Francisco. So just life in general in the city is all about the people, the culture, and for me, the service to make San Francisco, keep San Francisco the beautiful and vibrant city, and it just needs to continue to thrive. And I think we can get there with the right leadership, uh, and that's what I feel I can bring is that leadership.
Yeah, man, that's very beautifully said, bro. Very beautifully said. This city offers so much, man, and again, for it to get the reputation that it's kind of been getting lately, it's heartbreaking, man. And you mentioned leadership, man, and I want to get into that too. You know what I'm saying? Because I've always known you as somebody that's gonna go out there and do your thing, man. You know what I'm saying? Like you've always been that type of guy, man. From as far back as I can remember, dude. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? always been like the life of the party type guy, man. And I want people to kind of get that, you know, that view of who you are, man, through
Yeah,
this. I'm gonna ask you a question that's gonna transition into,
yeah,
leadership. That's also gonna transition into, what's SF is currently in right now and what we're facing as a community, as a city. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to ask you, man, with San Francisco's issues and everything like that, and you have already worked, for like you said, 10 plus years. You did 10 plus years in the Marines. What have you learned about, in San Francisco? What have you learned in your position so far by talking to other people, by, being out there on the ground, and what's some of the biggest lessons that you can take away from your career thus far, man?
yeah. So that's a great question. So I'm going to pretty much discuss what I've seen over the past, number of years, in addition to kind of the leadership aspect, as I want to transition as well to kind of answer that question. So, so like I mentioned earlier, I've been a police officer for 10 years, working at various agencies in San Francisco. So I started my career at San Francisco Police Department, and then I transitioned to the sheriff's office, where I'm currently trying to get elected in the San Francisco Sheriff's Department. And then I worked at San Francisco State University Police Department, and now I'm at UC San Francisco Police Department. So that 10 years, people will people sorry people will say like, oh, he's jumped all over the place, and for me, it's actually, I see it as a plus because I've seen it from different perspectives. I've seen it at
Right.
the San Francisco Police Department. I've seen it from working the jails in the sheriff's department, right? And then I've seen it in the undergrad college setting at San Francisco State, and now at the graduate level where it's a medical hospital. So those different perspectives in policing has sort of let me put on different lenses in that policing sort of overall umbrella, right? It's not just one way. There's all these different ways we serve. And I literally, at each department that I've worked for, I sort of had to change the manner in which I speak to the community that I'm serving because it's a different population, right? So obviously in the city of San Francisco, you're dealing with the city community directly, mainly because anything like, so for example, I did my initial training at Bayview Hunters Point. So I served that community at Bayview Hunters Point. Then when I left to work in the jails at the sheriff's department, I was mainly in the jail where I dealt with the incarcerated folks, the inmates, right? So that's a different population. SF State, they're all mainly undergrads from out of town. Some from the city, but I noticed a lot were from SoCal, and it's just a different sort of element there. And now at the graduate school medical hospital level, that's a different community on its own as well. So just dabbling into all these different communities allowed me to have a well-rounded perspective of how policing can and should be. So that's where that experience comes from. And then the 10 years from the Marines, what that taught me was leadership, the ability to adapt to an always changing environment like policing, taught me how to push through challenges, and mainly that leadership that I want to bring. That I don't believe there's been an elected official in recent history that I can think of that ever served in the military. Usually that's something that's highlighted. So I mean, I could be wrong, but I think at least this go around, there's a number of veterans running for office in San Francisco, and I know one of them is a Reardon alum too. So he's running for District 9. Julian, shout out to Julian Bermudez out in the Mission, Portola neighborhoods. I think that's where he's running. And then a shout out to Stephen Martin Pinto. He grew up, went to Lowell. He's also a Marine Corps veteran that's running for District 7. So yeah, so there's not a lot of uh, military experience in city elected office last I checked, but it could be a big enough city where I just don't know. But that's something that makes me unique in that aspect. So yeah, I want to transition to what I bring in leadership and experience. So my motto for my campaign is leadership through action. I put it all over my website and some of my flyers. But for me, I was thinking long and hard for like what do I want to convey to the San Francisco voters? What makes me different? And there's a difference between elected officials, managers, supervisors, and leaders. Leaders obviously lead, managers just manage, right? Those are two clearly different words, clearly different definitions, right? So for me, I want to be a leader that takes action when it's needed. So the sheriff, so the sheriff's office, as I mentioned earlier, the distinction between the police chief and the sheriff, they, in essence, report to two different people. So the police chief, he reports to the mayor or the board of supervisors. The sheriff technically reports to the people because he or she is voted in by the people, right? It's on the ballot. You don't see the police chief's name on there or candidates for police chief on the ballot, right? So that's the difference. That's where the leadership comes in. I report to you as the San Francisco resident, right? So if I'm not doing my job, you cannot vote me in the next go around, or you can recall me. That's what's happened with the former District Attorney Chesa Boudin, right? People weren't happy with what he was doing, they recall you. That's the way I feel it should be, and I'm all for it because you should be able to tell your elected officials that they're whether they're doing a good enough job.
There should
And
be accountability.
there's and 100% there should be accountability, and that goes into leadership. Like for me, the way I want to lead the San Francisco Sheriff's Office is one, take action when it's necessary, and that's so much easier said than done. So I know I'm not naive to that fact, right? But it's about making certain moves, whether how big, small, whatever conversation needs to be had, you need to have them, right? So making the tough conversations through action. Two is transparency. I think it's important for the community to know what the sheriff's office is doing, what programs they're trying to develop, and what status, like how far along in the process. Like, for example, if I told you, you know, I'm the new sheriff in San Francisco, I'm starting this mentorship life skills program that I think will be a great way to reduce recidivism for teens all the way to adults. This is how I'm going to implement it. This is what I'm going to do. This is the metrics we're going to use to gauge success. Our first year, we're going to do, let's say, 100 students, high school age. But the best way to be more transparent is let's engage in the communities that see more at-risk youth. Let's try to divert a lot of what's happening with these kids that are in our schools that are leading their life into crime, if not already in doing all that stuff, right? So that's my example. If I'm doing that, how can I be more transparent with the community? One, I'm going to engage a community in what do they think would be the most beneficial for these group of kids that want to do this mentorship life skills program that I'm designing, right? So without giving too much of it away for other people to sort of rip off of, but in essence, it's what's happening now in all the various maybe after school programs uh, in general that are in the city with other nonprofits, but it has to be more comprehensive. And why comprehensive is because you can't just have one program to deal with just trauma and mental health and just you know, physical well being and, nutrition, right? It needs to be the full person. We're all individuals, but we're also like, you want to think holistically as a whole. So that is my goal. And then the mentorship part is really what is going to drive this whole thing. Mentors from their communities to be able to reach out and share their experiences on this wasn't working. I did it for 20 years and look at where it got me. It got me nowhere, right? I've talked to some of these younger men in jail. I'm like, why are you here? And they're like, just doing stupid stuff because they had no mentorship, no guidance. And that was a common theme that I saw asking the question, like, why are you here? And oftentimes they don't have male role models in the home. Some of them were incarcerated, some just weren't around anymore. So what do boys do, when they got free time and they just got the homies in the neighborhood, they just go do what they do. And guess what happens? A higher percentage of times, especially in the more underserved parts of San Francisco, uh, it's just you get caught up. And that's a fact. You can Yeah, you take your pick. That's maybe the inner cities of America, right? Underserved communities or historically underserved communities face challenges like that. So that's where the mentorship comes in. That's where the life skills come in, and life skills meaning learning just the nuances of how to cook. I've talked to some cats just out and about. Grown folks don't know how to cook, which is there's nothing wrong. You just didn't learn how to cook. Well, if I can learn how to feed myself in a healthy, I know what nutrition is. That's going to benefit me physically, mentally, and that leads to whole person sort of concept that I have. And through that, you gain confidence in your ability to do what you got. You don't got to go to the store all the time, waste money. Like personal finance would be another one of those sort of classes, that life skills that these individuals take. If you're at the high school level, it has to be high school level sort of relatability. If you're an adult, you have sort of the adult aspect of those life skills. But in essence, the goal is to be transparent and work with the community to bring the best out of our communities. And the last part is accountability. It's such an important part of law enforcement and any elected office, to be honest, is accountable for decisions that are made and actions that are made based off of information that we have at the time that we're making decisions, right? That's all you can hope for. And in my opinion, as a citizen of San Francisco and California, that's like I can only hope that the best decisions are made based on the information at the time, right? That's what you hope. So my goal to stay accountable to that is also being transparent. If I'm showing through a website or on social media, hey, remember those programs I said we're going to do? Well, we're at about 20% of the way to getting funding. We're moving on to this part of it. So you're accountable, you're transparent, you're having that dialogue, that communication with your community on what you're doing, and I feel that's the only way to serve, because we already know that if I don't know what's happening with my tax dollars, your mind starts to want to figure out, well, maybe they're doing it not in the right way. So maybe if somebody just told me what was happening, and I compare this kind of to parenting, like, I mean, I'm not a father yet, but it's basic logic with kids, right? Like you tell them what's going on, or maybe just an educator or a coach. You're communicating, you're telling them. There's that back and forth. Why are we doing this drill in football practice? Well, this is why we're doing it. We're trying to build this. We're trying to build that. We're trying to build the foundation for you to succeed as a football player. Same thing with the community. We're trying to succeed in this aspect. How can I better communicate or serve our community members? It's by being transparent and being accountable for what we do. So that's the long of it.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you for sharing your background. Thank you for sharing your ideas. Thank you for, sharing who you are, man. And honestly, all I hear is just a completely well-rounded person that's seen so many different angles and been on the ground in so many different areas throughout the city. And that just is in touch with people, and what I gathered from what you just told me too, man, is that like you very much put yourself in the position of other people, which is a innate skill that a lot of people don't have, and you seem to have that. And I think that's very important when you're looking to serve. And I fully agree with that. Serving is what we all should be focused on, man. If we could each one teach one type of thing, can you imagine how much better our communities would be, our society would be? And I love the idea that you brought up with mentorship, and because it's about building better leaders building better leaders, and you clearly laid out the difference between a leader and a manager and a boss, and I fully agree with that, man. Leadership is a very, very difficult position, but when you've already got natural qualities and you've focused on developing those, as you have through your experiences, through the different things that you've kind of thrown yourself in, and the things you've seen and the things you've learned, even from playing football back at Reardon, man. I know you were we've referenced sports throughout several moments in this conversation so far. I know you learned a lot there too, and
Mm-hmm.
that's very important for individuals, man. And you talk about some of the young men that you met, and something that stuck out with me was when you asked them like, "What are you doing here, man?" Because you probably see so much potential in these young men, but they don't see it for themselves because they didn't have that leadership and that guidance, and they were just products of their environment, man. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's the situation people are dealt with, and they kind of come up out of that not knowing that there's a better way. But you just seeing that and having those conversations, making sure that they're seen and they're heard, and
Yeah.
even breathing life into them. That's super important. And I think that if there were more programs like that they knew about, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
that can help them, you start with each individual and they bring that into their household. Like you said, some of the basic kind of common knowledge, or not even common knowledge, some of the basic things like feeding yourself and understanding nutrition and how that can radiate outwards and the impact that can have on an individual, man. That's all important stuff because, bro, if they become, if they even scratch the surface of what their potential is, they become better members of society, and better members of society do better things within the community. And then the
Yeah.
community becomes more coherent, it becomes more welcoming, more inviting, more safe. We're doing things out of love, we're doing things out of, pride for the city. We're protecting the city. We're not doing things that's going to destroy the city where we all
Yeah.
live in, where we all have to, you know, coexist, So I love what you brought there, man. And that question was great, and I love that you expanded on that. And now I really want to transition into what you see as like the top three things that the city is facing, like the top three issues that's most relevant to you that you feel like you want to tackle when you get in your position.
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and it's a tough question. So this will be multifaceted, and there's no like cookie cutter answer for this. So my perspective is going to be focused on the law enforcement side of it, obviously as an elected sheriff, and then I'm going to dabble into the homelessness and mental health side only because as it relates to law enforcement, like in the jails. So the top three things first is violent crime across the city, robberies, uh, and then most recently of elders. It's not really recent; it's been happening for a while, and the Asian communities in an uproar as they should, as any community when elderlies are being targeted uh, of violent crimes, and we've seen it on the news over the years. I mean, I guess the starting point for me, and maybe for most in the community, is the pandemic. That was sort of a shift, in my opinion, on things that were happening because nobody's ever gone through a pandemic before, but we managed to get through it. But during those times, all these things were happening as well. So the violent crime needs to be addressed first and foremost. I know the San Francisco Police Department and the San Francisco Sheriff's Office are doing a great job and their best in addressing all these issues with their investigators and the coordination with all the agencies that are involved when investigating these type of crimes. It's just hard for the community, and I've talked to a bunch of community members in the Asian community who are frustrated, like why are we not getting answers? Why is this person not going to jail? There's so many factors to that, right? As it involves, city law enforcement and the district attorney's office and all that. So I guess that'll be sort of a separate thing, but we need to deal with violent crime first. Second would be the property crimes. Business owners they're getting burglarized at a pretty high rate. I don't have numbers for any of this, and that's on me for not bringing numbers. But we see it enough regularly. If you're just looking at any sort of media outlet on social media or online, it happens every day. I met with a restaurant owner. His name is Chino Yang. I follow him on social media. That's how I've heard about him. And so he has a store on McAllister and Divisadero. It gets vandalized. He said it was his 10th time. I think I saw in his post, right? But he's not the only one. All throughout the city, other establishments have getting burglarized. They're coming in, taking ATMs out of, corner stores, whether it's liquor stores or grocery stores. And then the auto burglaries. People are, we call it Bip City earlier. They're just getting their cars broken into, their property taken, right? We work hard for our property, for our own things. Why should you fall victim to somebody just getting to take it? And this all circles back to just the volume of this type of crime, whether it's violent crime or property crime. And the city district attorney's office have to manage all this and getting those things dealt with from an investigative standpoint and a charging standpoint, which is where the district attorney comes in. So those are the two main ones that really come to mind because one, it affects your personal safety. Two, your our businesses and our local economy. That's always at risk because people are leaving their business. People are selling their business. They don't want to do it anymore because there's no safety. So those two areas, if we can address those, and then thirdly, the sideshow activity and the you got those motorcycle groups that come through the city just terrorizing people, just going about their day. It's those are three of the main things that I've been hearing, that I've been following, that can be addressed right away and should be. And I know the San Francisco Police Department and the Sheriff's Office are doing the best that they can. It's just sometimes we need different perspective, different vision, different pieces to put together. It's like I always compare it to sports. Maybe you need a different coach with a different philosophy. Not to say that one coach, wasn't a good coach, but you just sometimes need to change it up, and that's a fact of life. That's a fact of communities. That's just anywhere you go. If something's not working, maybe it's time for change, and that's what I bring. I want to bring a different lens, a different perspective, and for me, I'm still halfway through my career where I can see through policies that I will implement. So, for example, what that means is, well, the current sheriff has been serving the department for a very long time, 20 something years, and I commend him and anybody that's been in our profession for that many years uh, completely, because it's a long, long road, and I know the folks like the sheriff or the police have endured a lot of challenges, a lot of hardship in their personal and professional careers. So that's great. I will never speak in any other way other than praise and just thank them for all that they've done. But for me, putting myself in the mix, putting myself out there is really just out of what you sort of mentioned earlier, out of love for San Francisco. I'm passionate about service. I'm passionate about the communities, and the only way to make change is to be part of that change. To be the change you want to see is the line that I've heard so often. How are you going to be that change? Well, I got to get in the game. I got to get in the game and do this. So to answer that question, kind of circle back to it. So those are the main three things: the violence, the property crimes, some of the sideshow activity that people are getting hurt at, right? I'm thinking maybe in our younger years, or like that actually, it's like, oh, it's kind of cool to show up to these. I mean, I never went to them, but I could see the attraction of why, right? But if we keep on enabling behavior, people not only from San Francisco will do these things, people come from all over the Bay Area to commit crimes. I guarantee you, all of these folks are not from the city, right? So
Sure.
people are coming in because they know it's going to be a certain type of way that, oh, they can get away with whatever they want in San Francisco. And that sort of message needs to be dealt with immediately. And the best way to do that is to upfront, if you're committing these crimes, take you to jail and be consistent, be persistent, and don't let off the gas on that one. And then I know what I mentioned, the whole mental health and homelessness aspect. While those two things aren't crimes in and of itself, the community that I've spoke to, which is folks that are like, why are people being arrested for homelessness? They're mentally ill. Why are they going to jail? Well, that's where partnerships with places like the agencies like the sheriff's office need to work in conjunction with public health and homelessness and supportive housing and the San Francisco Health Services Agency. I think there could be a better relationship between those agencies to really triage who even needs to be coming into jail. For example, if you have a mentally ill person that's committed a crime, right? But this person has a history of mental illness, clinicians and providers have recorded that this person is mentally ill, but when they're out, not on their medication, they get a certain type of way and do X, Y, and Z. Take your pick on what the crime is, but the root cause of that is mental illness. So that person should not be in a jail. That person needs to get diverted to a long-term hospital or medical clinic, right? Deputies in a custody setting or police officers out on the street, I'm not to say you should never deal with somebody with a mental illness, but if we clinically know this person has those challenges or issues, well, why, of all the money that's out there in the city, why are we not diverting any to long-term medical care? And that's an honest question. Who has the answer for that? I haven't heard a single person bring up in anybody running for office anywhere what they're going to do for the mentally ill. They say we need more housing. Well, great, but that person can't even sustain themselves in that housing. And guess what? I've seen some of them already. Like, they're off their meds. You go inside their residence, it's just like they are out on the streets. There's no livability. it's full of, I mean, to us it seems like garbage and trash. To them it's their property, which is very valid and true, but it's a sort of a public health issue. It's a personal health, it's a hygiene issue. You have somebody who has garbage lined to the, the brim of their where they're living. That's not that's not the solution. It's adding to the problem. This
No.
person now is going to get sick in any other way, but they're not fixing them. It's not an environment to heal or to deal with mental illness, in my opinion. And maybe that's just me, but let's have some of our elected officials or folks running, like, go look at some of these single resident occupancies or some of these San Francisco provided housing. It's not clean. You walk in through the front door, it's not. And let's not call what it is, right? It needs to be dealt with appropriately. It needs to be clean. It's a public health concern and doesn't allow for actual growth or moving or dealing with challenges that you're facing. So that's one. And then second, the homelessness issue. That's not inherently a law enforcement matter, but excuse me, it becomes, the police department will assist with encampments and stuff like that. So in that aspect, you can enforce encampment ordinances in San Francisco, but being homeless is not a crime in and of itself. So that's where the housing comes in. But at what point are we going to turn, like, somebody encamped on the streets in tents to, are we going to take some sort of action of accountability? Are we actually going to charge them with these ordinances? Are we going to, take a more active approach and not allowing that to happen? Because guess what? If you keep on letting it happen, bigger encampments happen. So it's like you take it at one place, but they just move to a different place, and it's sort of an eyesore, in my opinion. And that, I don't mean to be rude in any way, but we have such a beautiful city, and now you have encampments that leads to, again, public health issues because trash is accumulating in these areas. What happens when there's a lot of trash? Insects, rodents, rats, right? So it's just not a healthy sort of environment for those individuals as well. So let's solve that. How can we get people into housing? But then how can they support themselves within this housing that we're giving them without any sort of, do we get anything back for that? Like, is everything just free now? So while you and I and everyone else has to work, we're just handing out money, handing out housing while other folks are trying to afford rent also. So where's the balance there? And I kind of veered off the whole law enforcement side, but it's sort of intertwined with law enforcement, with, you know, other social services in San Francisco and how that affects our communities. So, and I guess the overarching message I want to send is my goal is to get into office and address the crime and the issues that surround that first and foremost. So hopefully that answers that question.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think you shine a lot of different things, man. And as I texted you on the side yesterday, man, I told you of a story of me just walking through the Tenderloin. I live right here in downtown San Francisco, like Mission Bay. So I'm close to Soma, close to all these different areas, and even just right outside my place to live in, where I see encampments. You know what I'm saying? And you kind of brought up a point where one encampment, if we continue to enable that, it's going to bring more people. Like there's people that's just been chilling there for like the past couple of days, and then more people kind of come along, and it just kind of like breeds more kind of it just attracts more of that type of activity. And I, walking through the Tenderloin yesterday, Mike, man, I did it with full intent to just kind of get a temperature of where we're at right now. And the
Yeah,
Tenderloin's always been the Tenderloin, right? Ever
yeah,
since I remember it, the Tenderloin.
as I can remember.
Yeah, for those that don't know San Francisco, or don't understand what we're talking about, the Tenderloin ain't nothing tender about it, man. That's
Yeah,
what Dave Chappelle said in one of his stand-up comedy skits, and it's the truth. It is absolutely grimy. It's dirty. It's filthy. It's all
yeah,
these different words, and like you mentioned, eyesores, right? Like, I mean, the fact that we even have to kind of sugarcoat it a little bit. It is what it is. It's
yeah.
disgusting.
It's
Walking
it's actually
through there,
filthy.
walking through through there, Mike, I honestly felt that like if you spend enough time there, you can get sick because the
Yeah,
air quality
100%.
was disgusting. There was a lot like there's feces everywhere. There's people doing open drugs. People were just yelling across the street. Hey, hey, who got Molly? Hey, hey, who? You
Yeah,
guys see people smoking pipes, like sleeping on the ground,
yeah,
in their own filth. It's like how do people not understand? Like there's no way to sugarcoat that, bro. Like
yeah,
we're in a situation now where like we're not helping these people. We're enabling the behavior. For us
yeah,
to really help, we're gonna have to really get in there. We're gonna have to really like, sometimes have these real tough conversations with people and say, hey, look, you need to get some help, and here's
yeah,
what you can do. You can go to XYZ. Here's some of the steps you can take. And you've referenced, you talked about the city, you said Bip City, man, and the sideshows and this and that. That's what we as a culture have been known for so long. And it's, dude, maybe at one point when I was younger, I used to think sideshows were cool and this, that, and the third. And I actually do think from an optic standpoint, it looks real dope. But from a public safety standpoint,
yeah,
it's one of the worst, most dangerous things that can happen out there.
yeah.
And
Because you're just running reckless in the city. This
in
is not.
spots that are not even designed for that. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned a good point that I wanted to talk about briefly was the whole open drug. Clearly, that's always been an issue in the Tenderloin, but just throughout the city. And you made a good point again about enabling behavior. It's while I get you have the right to choose what you want to do as far as what you consume, it's it's gone so far off that fentanyl is no joke. People
no,
are dying. They're dying in the Tenderloin of fentanyl overdose. The fact that more and more people are just they know how to use Narcan. They're trained. Oh, opioid overdose, Narcan. They already know. And the fact that it's so readily available, like in case somebody does overdose, that's where it's like I think it's kind of an issue now if it's so common. And I was at SF General the other night, and so they had an overdose coming in, and just seeing this person, like I don't think this person really wants this for themselves. They've got addicted to drugs at some point in their life, whether it's trying it out, whether it's they were dealing with a tough trauma and then led them to try to just what do you call it, numb the pain or numb the whatever's causing it, right? But we have to get to the root cause of maybe drug addiction as well. While doing drugs is illegal, right? The root cause of it is maybe trauma. So I know there's many of mental health clinicians, providers that are trying to but there's just so much, there's so many people to see and so quick turnaround on, it's just so hard to manage. And while that's not a law enforcement aspect necessarily, when people are committing crimes, it does become one. So I don't have the I don't have a one size fits all answer for that one. That is strictly we just need to hold people accountable for you're using drugs in the open street. You need to go to jail and rehab for that, right? We can't just keep on like, oh no, it's all good. Like that's no big deal. We don't have enough space in the jail facility for to hold you accountable because now it's just we don't have enough space. Well, guess what? We needed a new jail facility in San Francisco years ago, and we lost that opportunity due to the city not wanting to go that direction. And while we're not talking about mass incarceration per se. We're just like holding people accountable. Where else? Like it's all about how you look at things at this point. If you continue to consider holding people accountable as mass incarceration, then it always will be mass incarceration to you because there's no other choice. So we just allow behavior and don't hold any accountable just for the sake of saying we don't want mass incarceration. Nobody wants mass incarceration. But if we can rehabilitate somebody, you still need to go somewhere to deal with the root causes of what we're talking about, whether it's violent crime, whether it's mental illness that leads to a crime, or whether it's doing drugs, right? It starts somewhere. You need to be held accountable. Let the courts decide what the appropriate avenue for to resolve your actions, and that's where it goes. I don't think anybody anywhere in our right mind just wants mass incarceration, especially not in San Francisco. And the community's spoken about that. So my way of communicating the community about mass suppression. We don't want that. Like, but we shouldn't just let people do what they want and get away with it. That doesn't seem right to me. I mean, it doesn't seem right to you. I don't think it seems right to anybody. Just let's be very logical. Somebody does something that's against the law, they need to go to jail, right? Then jail will lead to them going to court. Court will lead to a sentence, and it doesn't always lead to prison, right? So those are sort of the steps that we need to take to turn the ship around. And without that, without the community believing that that is the appropriate course of action, I think it's very difficult to turn things around. But that's where leadership comes in. That's where like communication, accountability, transparency, all those things we've mentioned or talked about earlier. That's where that comes in. It's not just managing now; it's leading people, leading a group of people towards a common goal, and that's what I intend on doing.
I think it's really important to highlight what you did there, Mike. I think you again you put yourself in another person's shoes, man, and you put yourself in that person's place where, they're suffering from drug addiction, but even at the root of that, at their heart of in their heart of hearts, they don't want to be in that position. They somehow ended up there due to a lot of decision making from possible trauma, from a lot of different things that kind of transpire within their life. You know what I mean? And it's a really dark place when you really go off the deep end. Sometimes, I'll be honest. Sometimes I feel like when I see some of these people, these people are so far off the deep end that it's like it's impossible to bring them back. But as a human being, I want to hold on to that hope, man. And I think you have that hope too for these people, that they can find a better way back. They can be productive members of society. They can find joy in life again. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah,
it's going to take work. But what's not helping them is enabling them. And by providing, certain materials for them to get high and continue their addiction, that's not helping them. That's hurting them.
yeah,
Walking through the Tenderloin yesterday, like I, there was literally bodies on the floor that I
yeah,
didn't even know if they were alive or not. And
yeah.
the simple fact, Mike, that we could walk through these streets and not even bat an eye at a
Somebody
person,
that's face down.
right, that's face down,
That's like
laying
I
lifeless.
laugh because it's not funny, but yeah, no, I get it.
We're we're
It's
so
ridiculous.
we're so jaded to this, man.
Yeah, it's
You
gotten
know,
so much it's ridiculous.
and the kids see this
Yeah,
as a normal thing. This is not normal. This
yeah,
is not
no,
a normal thing. That's not normal behavior. That's not healthy behavior. And
yeah,
but this is our reality at the same time. And I think it's going to take people in positions like yours and higher positions as well to, have these conversations and then create these plans and then implement these plans and then really get the people on board within the community to, work together and implement these plans as well. And you know what, man, it's a lot of hard work, the role that you're stepping into, for sure. I understand that, which is why I appreciate you even wanting to get in that position, you know what I'm saying? And you talked about police, overall, how tough of a position it is. I have a respect and appreciation for all the jobs that you guys do out there, man. You guys are risking your lives every single day and things of that nature. And just to kind of shine light onto the position itself that you're going for as police sheriff, what is it that you'd be privy to being able to do, like, in that position, like you think that you'd be able to have like access to, and so what are some of the different ways that you can have the most impact in your position?
yeah. So as the role of sheriff, I just wanted to clarify for the listeners or the voters, the sheriff is one position and the police chief is another. So just for clarification, so yeah, so for the sheriff, you're elected. I was mentioning this earlier, you report to the people. Whatever you do, you can get recalled if you're not doing a good enough job, right? So that's one. That's how you can hold yourself to a standard, is you have
Are
to.
you still going to be on the streets and all that stuff too, or would you have an office? Like,
Well, so the elected sheriff has an office. I mean, all the top, like they're called command staff, right? They all technically have offices, but there's nothing that says you can't go out on the street and talk to the people and do those things. So
Mhm.
while the role is definitely more of an office type job, my goal is to really engage the community more so out on the streets and have those open conversations that we've talked about, uh, more so, because you will have better understanding of what decision needs to be made based on what the community is telling you, right? I can't learn that from an office, or I can't hear that from an office. I have to be there. Hearing it firsthand is my goal. So yeah, so the San Francisco sheriff and any other county sheriff in the state and the country, they're elected and they report to the people. And you are pretty much can do whatever is necessary uh, in conducting law enforcement operations. Just what makes a difference is San Francisco has separated the two for the sheriff's department and the police department. So in San Francisco, what's happened over the years, I'm not quite sure when it all started, but the police department does all the patrolling, right? You see all the SFPD on the streets in their cars, right? And then the sheriff's department works the jails and city hall, all the
Uh,
medical clinics and county buildings, right? So those roles have separated, uh, I would imagine, decades ago. And I think more can be done in the patrol aspect with deputies out on the streets. So what I mean is, instead of only seeing SFPD on the streets, we could have more sheriff's deputies on the streets as well, who bring a different set of skills, having worked in the jails as well. I see how deputies have a certain level of communication skills that maybe some police officers haven't learned, right? There's plenty of great communicating police officers, but some deputies have that sort of first-hand relationship with somebody that was in a jail that is not in jail anymore, that are on the street, let's say, doing drugs. Or a number of times when I left working the jails, I've run into guys that I dealt with that were incarcerated, and they're out. And I checked on how you doing these days. I remember you were in about a year ago. Oh, I'm doing well. It's like, I just want to let you. I appreciate you, Juan. You were always cool. You weren't really, you know, giving me a hard time. This and I was like, oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, my job is not to give you a hard time. It's to help you. It's to uphold laws that and rules that are set in place in a jail facility, but and out on the street as well. So I think in essence, what I'm trying to say is there can be more collaboration between the sheriff's department and the police department, with staffing levels being so low for both departments. I think we just need to recruit more and get more support from City Hall, equally as much as they're putting into San Francisco Police Department, which I think they just got a budget of upwards of 100 million. I think is what I heard. You need to put some money towards the sheriff's department, because who's going to supervise the people that you intend to arrest? Like, there's not enough space to begin with. There's not enough people, deputies, that are going to supervise inmates in the jail. That's a fact. So, on this campaign, and when I've talked to candidates running for office, you can't just give SFPD 100 million and not give the sheriff's department anything. Make it sort of, a proportionate amount. You give X amount of dollars to San Francisco police. You give, maybe it's not the same amount of money because it's going to so many different things, and the sheriff's department is not as big. But make it proportionate. It's going to go to staffing. It's going to go to equipment. I guarantee there's a need for it right now. I actually spoke with a bunch of deputies that are working right now. Like, we need so many things. So I guess I take that back. If you're giving San Francisco all this money, sorry, the police department, you need to give equally, if not more, to the sheriff's department, because they've been underfunded for a long time. And we're talking about a jail facility that needs to be upgraded for the population, right? I've heard a news story like one of the facilities doesn't have enough open air access. While that may or may not have been an issue before, it's come to light now. So what are we going to do to address that? And you know, that's just one thing that I heard. So what are we going to do differently? Well, you can't do a single thing if the city's not going to give you money to fund that project, right? Which takes time as well. You got to get approval. You got to, finally decide who's going to do work on that project, like as far as contractors, and then you're going to have to execute it or operationalize it. So what does that mean? That's going to be years before anything's going to get done. So that's where we're at. We're at one of the most important election cycles anywhere, and people say, "Oh, it's always the important one." I don't know, man. I feel this one is very crucial to what's going to happen to San Francisco. if we elect the wrong people, or if even just anybody, if they don't do the job they say they're going to do, we're going to be in a whole lot of hurt. And we need to move in a different direction fast, because the tenderloin alone will show you what direction we're going in. And it's let's just be honest, it's not a good direction. I don't care what news outlet, what elected official is telling you. You walk through the streets of the Tenderloin, walk any part of the city. It's not what it once was. It's not as safe as it was. And I'm not here to scare folks either. I want people to just be aware of the reality that we're facing. Because if I don't want my parents walking, downtown somewhere, then shoot, I wouldn't want your parents or your grandparents walking anywhere down there by themselves. So what does that tell you about the status of our city? Politicians are going to tell you that things are great and this and that, and go see for yourself. Don't believe anything you hear or see until you can confirm it for yourself. And that's just a fact in anything in life, right? So I guess what I want to sort of wrap my point up with is, I want to empower our community to take their safety into their own hands, their personal safety. I encourage folks to carry pepper spray at minimum, just because it's important. Uh, Whether somebody's facing mental illness and you still happen to be in their proximity, or somebody actually wants to commit a crime against you, pepper spray is one of the first things you can do to protect yourself. But also, most importantly, is a mindset. You have to have just a situational awareness type of mindset, right? Don't keep your eyes on your phone when you're walking through, to your car, right? These little tips is what I tell the community. And then, this is going to be a controversial topic, but yeah, it's your right. Concealed carry permits. San Francisco Police Department and the San Francisco Sheriff's Department are issuing out CCWs. It is your absolute right to carry a firearm if that's your choice. It's in the Second Amendment. This is definitely going to be something that's going to catch a soundbite at some point, but I think it's just the honest truth. If you and the community don't feel safe to move around our own city, and you feel a firearm would be the best way to protect yourself, then get the training. I mean, and do what you need to do to protect yourself and your family. Because it's not fair that only criminals are the ones carrying it illegally, and we catch them and we don't hold them accountable for carrying a gun illegally. So why should honest, hardworking citizen who is carrying it legally have to feel like they're doing something wrong for wanting to protect themselves? As a law enforcement officer, we're allowed to carry concealed off duty, right? So I don't necessarily face those challenges, but what about, you know, folks in other parts of the city that are not larger in stature that can defend themselves? That fire may be the single thing that will prevent them from getting victimized. And I'd rather that be the issue we're talking about than somebody on the news because they're dead. That's the reality we face. Whether it's drugs, because that's killing people, but violent crime can also kill people too, and that's nothing new. But I think the conversation now is, what are we going to do to empower our community members to stay safe? There's not enough police on the street or deputies. There wouldn't even be enough, even at full staffing. It's even worse. It's worse now. Those are facts. So I just want to do that. I want to change things and go in a different direction. I don't know how else to do it other than the things I've mentioned on this interview and this podcast, which I thank you for allowing me the opportunity. Uh, but just say what has to be said. And those are the only ways. You have to take your personal safety and your life into your own hands. You can't not rely on anybody else but yourself. Our local government should be, our state government should be, but guess what? Laws are being passed that make no sense, that are not protecting its citizens, like in the state of California, right? We have to be better citizens by paying attention to the laws that are being put out there. It's kind of hard too, and it's not an easy thing by any means, because things get diluted in all these assembly bills and senate bills. What's the difference?
Even just the
When do I
wording,
vote
yeah,
for
the
it?
wording can be confusing
The
to
word that, and
people.
that's I blame those. I blame our legislatures. Those we
It's
vote
intentional,
in.
but it's intentional at the same time.
Yeah, and that I can't deny that perception or fact. It could be both, right? But let's be honest and tell the truth on what we feel is happening, and that's a valid argument. Because I feel the same way. I'm like, why is this law being enacted when it makes zero sense coming from people in Sacramento that may have never have to worry about this in whatever communities they live in. They're not the ones that have to feel the wrath of this failed policy. So I want to circle back real quick on what I'm learning at the University of San Francisco in the Master of Public Administration program. Policy analysis is one of the things that we're learning, and shout out to Dr. Johnson if you end up watching this video. But I want to credit what I'm learning at USF in this program to how I can better serve in that aspect. We need to fix the policies that we're putting out in our communities. And if it's failing, why are we doubling down on it? Or why are we not making adjustments? And this sort of leadership comes into play most importantly. If you make a policy or a rule that is failing, or we're taking a lot of losses on this, there is no shame in owning up. Hey, you know what? I think we messed up on this. We maybe gauged whatever this policy is wrong. Let's fix it now. You will get way more respect. You tell me as a San Francisco resident or just a resident anywhere, hey, my city politician just told me, and we think we went a wrong direction. We gauged it. We should maybe gather more data, right? And then make adjustments to whatever that policy or rule or law is, right? That's at all levels. Would you be mad at somebody that admitted, hey, I misgauged? I
No,
don't think so.
we're
You'd probably
very
get more
forgiving.
respect.
We're very forgiving, and hey, man, for me, you would
We're
gain a
human.
lot of
It's like,
respect. Yeah, mistakes are made, man. Mistakes are made,
yeah,
and it's totally fine. If you own up to it, I actually respect you more because that's the
exactly.
thing to do.
And that's exactly the point I wanted to emphasize was to our elected officials, to our future elected officials, to the people that serve our community. People make mistakes. Own up to it. Be held accountable for it with whatever sort of punishment or accountability comes with it, and then move on, move forward from it. People get stuck like, oh, we can't. The optics of looking bad by admitting wrong. I feel I feel just not owning up to something we already know is wrong is far worse than just saying it out loud and moving forward,
Mm.
right? Why are you just you're enabling your own mistakes? You're doubling down on a policy that's failing just because of your ego. And again, I'll say this: ego is what drives failure. Because when you're ego driven, that's when you're not thinking about the community member that is closest to the problem. That's what I learned at USF. Get to the people closest to the problem. Shout out to Dr. Callahan. It's it's one of those things where ego prevents you from seeing the bigger picture, and the bigger picture ain't about you. It's about the communities we intend to serve, and that's where I'm coming from. And that's all I want to do. I want to bring everybody from every community, and it's not going to be easy. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but it takes a mindset and a cultural mindset and a growth mindset to move in this direction. It takes a village, like they say, right? It takes iron to sharpen iron, whatever analogy you want to use, but we have to help each other. And again, this is way easier said than done, and I'm not saying that this will happen in one term. I intend to do multiple terms and see where this takes me. And what I want to say to everyone watching this show, and I don't know if this is the end of it yet, but I just I'm kind of going off the hip on this one. Just like let's just reflect on everything that we're doing with our community, and let's be for our community. Get your own. Obviously, you got to do what you got to do for yourself. But when you can help each other, help your fellow man get somewhere. Simple as you know, buying the homie that's homeless on the street something to eat that day, or kind words here and there. Right. I think we've gone so far off the culture of looking people in the eye and just being polite. There's sometimes there's entitlement that you see in the world. Like, let's just get off that and get off that train, and let's get back on the train of decency and humility and community, because in essence we need each other to move forward, and that's the goal.
You know what, Mike? In that moment right there, what you just did is very much highlighted your character. And anybody that watches this and hears you, and it's energy that you're emitting, man. Because of the love that you have for the city, the love that you have for other people, the compassion that you have, the care that you have, the potential that you see in individuals and people in our city. You know what I'm saying? And I think that yeah, you're absolutely right. We have kind of gotten away from that, man. Just doing the random acts of kindness, man, and working together. And thank you also for just basically laying out that distinction between the sheriff's department and the police department and the police chief and everything like that. So,
Yeah,
that's really important for people to know. You educated me on that as well, and I definitely hear that we need to have more of a kind of cohesive kind of collaboration, as you put it,
100%.
between the both departments, and make it act as one. Not only those departments, but the mental health departments, all these other different departments, so we can all work in conjunction. Like you said, man, perfectly said. It takes a village. It takes all of us. It takes, even the individual at the individual point, at the grassroots level, where you're just, you're being ultra vigilant out there. You know what I'm saying? You need that out
Hmm.
here. It's gotten to that place, man, where safety is a big concern. As we were talking about the tenderloin, I was reminded of a loved one that actually had a recent experience waiting at the bus stop on her way to work. And,
Hmm.
she grew up out here in the city too. And, oftentimes these drug addicts and these homeless people, they're for the most part they won't harm you, right? They'll kind of be out there tweaked out and everything like that, but they're not really going to put hands on you for the most part. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
from based on my experiences and based on most of the people I know's experiences. But this particular instance was different. My
yeah,
my loved one was, at the bus stop waiting, and a few feet away was one of these, people that were suffering and going through these, drug addictions, and probably having some sort of manic trip, and started getting all belligerent and threatening to my loved one, and she didn't know what to do. She
yeah,
froze, and fortunately for her, somebody saw what was going on and came to her aid and helped.
yeah,
But had it not been for that, and the situation continued to escalate,
yeah,
it could have been a whole nother situation, man. And
yeah,
unfortunately, it didn't. But these are instances that happen in the city far too much, man. And
yeah. You
knowing,
actually made me think of something that I wanted to bring out, if that's cool. So
please,
that exact scenario that you just said with your loved one waiting at the bus, I have a friend from the city as well. His grandmother was stabbed on Market Street in
stab,
2021.
stab,
Stabbed. Yeah, just sitting there. That could have been our grandmother, right? That's what was like the tipping point where I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, call it what it is, right? That the person that stabbed her was mentally ill. He had experienced, his, trauma, his crisis. He already had a rap sheet of committing violence like that, and he was out. He shouldn't have been out. So where is our system failing in holding people accountable? Is It's not at the maybe at the law enforcement level on the street, like you commit a crime, you go to jail. It's maybe not at the district attorney level who wants to charge for that. What people don't realize is the judges that are sentencing for these crimes is actually where it's at. They're not sentencing appropriately to the crime that's being committed. Again, if it's a mental illness sort of situation, maybe an opportunity to divert somebody to a facility for that. But if somebody has a huge record of committing violent acts and they're using the excuse of mental illness this whole time, while a grandmother got stabbed just for sitting at the bus stop, how many other people have to get stabbed before somebody's going to do something about it? Something's got to be done. And that's the most frustrating part. I'm glad your loved one was able to make it out, but why should we have to tiptoe around the fact that somebody experiencing a crisis and a mental crisis or mental illness, mental health situation, why does the rest of the community need to possibly fall victim to this person over? We're not trying to be insensitive to the person that's experiencing a mental illness. That is not the point.
no,
But the point I am trying to make is, when are we going to stop waiting until somebody has to get hurt for something to happen, right? Why does your loved one or anybody's loved one have to be within a few feet about from somebody that's about to lose it and possibly stab them, right? Swinging around metal poles. I hear it on the radio all the time when I'm driving through San Francisco going to where I'm going, right? The San Francisco police has to deal with, obviously at the sheriff's department. There's everything that's happening in the city needs to be dealt with that accountability in mind, right? We don't, or we're not typecasting you because you're suffering from mental illness. We want to get you help, but who is who do we need to hold accountable who's not doing what they need to do on their end in that sort of system that we have in place. So that's, I think, something important for the San Francisco voters to think about. It's important for anybody in their cities and counties that they live in, things to consider, right? We're here to really have that open dialogue and figure out what's the best for our communities that we live in. So ours specifically is San Francisco. So yeah, just that came to mind when you said that. It's like we don't need to wait for somebody to die before we need to make a decision on who needs to stay out on the streets or who doesn't. Right? It's getting to that ridiculous point. Like we're not even talking about. We're afraid to say that this person needs to stay either incarcerated or in a long-term mental health facility. That's just the bottom line. Because guess what? The family member. I mean, I'm sure she survived. I believe the woman survived, right? But like, what if she didn't? Now there's other folks that didn't make it after they were victimized, right? So where's the justice for them? Who's remembering them? Strictly their loved ones. There's no justice for them. So that's frustrating too. That's what really kind of gets me going. Is we need to have justice served appropriately for anyone for the actions committed, not for any
Absolutely.
one sort of group. I didn't at any point that I really focus on any group, but that's for anyone of any community. We need to just do it right for everyone. So yeah.
No, man, absolutely, bro. And you brought up so many great points throughout this whole episode of Unlocking Levels. And, I think what we really did was highlighted your character of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And they always say if the why is strong enough, the how is irrelevant because I think you have a strong reason for why you're going for your position. You have a super strong reason for why you continue to wake up and get up and get out into these streets every single day because you care, because you want to see people do better. You want us to be feel safer. You want us to have a better sense of pride within our community, within our city. And these are all important things, you know what I'm saying? And look, you and I both understand leaders are not always going to be liked. Leaders are not always going to be agreed with. And that's perfectly fine. We can disagree as long as we can be respectful towards one another. And sometimes leaders have to make really tough decisions. You know what I'm saying? And I think that throughout the course of this whole conversation, you've highlighted many instances to that signals that you will be one of those leaders that will have to make tough decisions sometimes, but it's for the betterment of the communities, for the betterment of the city, and it's rooted in your 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 love of people and your wanting to serve other people. So, we need more people like that in positions like that. So, I'm very, very excited for your journey, for your potential in getting into that position. And I hope that you do. And I hope that anybody that listens to this feels the same way, because character is very important. And you've definitely highlighted a great character. And I'm excited for the things you want to do. Before we get up out of here, man, I want you to kind of take a couple minutes to just kind of drop something that you feel like we haven't been able to talk about, or just leave us with like, what can they expect from you, after this election if you get into that office.
Yeah, so what you see is what you get with me. I try to be as authentic and genuine as possible. And again, people say, "Oh, that's what all politicians say," but I think we as the citizens can hear and feel and see a vibe when it's coming from somebody. I try to give off that I'm just saying it how it is and just being myself. So what I want to tell the citizens of San Francisco, the voters of San Francisco, what they're going to get from Michael Juan is I'm going to work tirelessly for you, the citizens, the community. It's not going to be easy, but I can guarantee that I'm going to give 110% of myself to do the right things for the right reasons for the community. And I can't even say it any other way. Like that's what I'm going to do. I don't need to tell you about policies necessarily because I think with the foundation and with the passion for the why that you mentioned, the community is my why. You're my why. The grandmother that shouldn't have got stabbed is my why. The person experiencing mental illness is my why. The person experiencing homeless is my why. the community is my why. So it's not hard if you know why you're getting yourself into this. And that sounds repetitive, it sounds cliche, but it's just the facts. And I just want to let the community know that I'm going to try to be better myself every day through education, which is what I'm doing, through experiences, through every moment that gives me an opportunity to learn. I'm going to take that lesson. I'm going to use it to serve you better, the community better, right? So I think with that growth mindset, you can't lose. And I don't think I could really lose. And I may lose this election with votes, but I've already won as far as going for this, putting myself out there, putting my name out there, and wanting to go on this journey because it wasn't easy. Granted, I had a short amount of time to do it based on personal and life circumstances, but I just want to tell the voters like, this is not the last you'll see of me. I will be out here doing my thing. You'll hear more from me, and I will only get better through time. I'm going to learn more, uh, and I'm going to just further my education, further my experiences, further my growth mindset in order to serve the city better. And God willing, I'll be there in a few. I'll get elected and then start my office in January. But we will see how that goes. I just, thank you for your time, Mr. CL the Source. And yeah, thank you for all the viewers listening and watching. Because without you guys, clearly podcast ain't possible. So that's the cue. I think my dog's bum rushing the door.
And Mike, brother, I appreciate your time, man. I know you're a busy guy, man. So thank you so much for taking that time to tell us who you are, show us who you are, and talk about some important issues surrounding the city, man. I'm excited
Yeah,
for your journey. I'm proud to vouch for you and your character, man. You know what I'm
I
saying?
appreciate
Everybody
it.
that rocks with me, I'm telling y'all firsthand, this man is a good person, and he means well, and he wants to do well for the city. So let's get him
Let me
in.
leave you with my social media real quick.
Please do.
So my Instagram is Michael Juan SF. My website is Michael Juan number four sheriff.com. So Michael Juan for sheriff.com. Reach out, DM me, email me. It's all on my website. Donate to the campaign if you are so inclined and if you can afford it. I appreciate you all. Thank you in advance. Thank you, brother, for this opportunity. I look forward to the next one and seeing you soon and seeing
Absolutely.
you all out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike. We appreciate you, brother. Thank you all for tuning in to Unlocking Levels. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.